All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here this afternoon for the latest in our 101 series on the IRA home rebate provisions. Today, we're going to be talking about contractor training, quality assurance, and all the different pieces of contractor training that come up in the rebate sections of this bill. Before we get started, I want to draw your attention to a couple of things that I put in the chat. The first link is to the NASEO website where you'll be able to find a recording from Tuesday's call. And I also put in the chat a link to DOE's new website on the rebates. That website has a space where you can enter your email and get the latest updates directly from DOE. So check those out. Let me introduce myself before we go any further. My name is Maddie Kohler with NASEO. I'm a part of our buildings team, and I am the NASEO staff person who's probably most in the weeds on these topics. So it's great to see all of you and looking forward to working on this topic with you over the next months, years, who knows. So let's dig in here. Our agenda for today will look very similar to those of you who were able to join us on Tuesday. We're going to be covering a deep dive on the legislation. We'll pause for a Q&A and discussion. Then we will shift our focus to key questions for future working group meetings. We'll have more time for Q&A after that. And then we will transition into an optional states-only discussion. So my hope with these 101 meetings is to really provide a deep dive in order to give you as much detail as we can, to empower you to start making decisions about what your preferences would be in the running of these programs, start making plans for you to tell NASEO, tell DOE about what your preferences would be. And so I think that's it for me. I'm going to stop sharing and turn things over to our presenter for the series, Cara Rinaldi. Please come online whenever you're ready and start sharing. Cara, for those of you who might have missed the introduction on Tuesday, is with Angel Policy Group, and though she doesn't take credit for it, she is unofficially the author of these pieces of legislation. So please take it away.
Yes, and I will give the credit fully to Senator Van Hollen and Congressman Welch, who is now Senator Welch, who led the legislation. Well, thank you for having me again. Again, I'm going to apologize for my voice. I'm getting over that same cold from Tuesday, but let's dig into contractor training in the Inflation Reduction Act, specifically in the Homes Act. So in the IRA, there is a state-based home energy efficiency contractor training grants. This is a specific section within the legislation. It is referenced for both the Homes Act and the whole house energy efficiency rebate program, as well as the electrification rebate program. The IRA provides $200 million for these training grants, and the grants to the state. These are grants to the states through the state energy program to support energy efficiency and electrification contractor training. They don't specify formula funds through this, though I know that there is a strong preference to go through the formula, but it hasn't been specified, and that there will be some specifications that DOE will release on implementation. Some implementation updates, including today, they announced that next week they will be releasing the RFI. So I actually had to even change the slides since this morning, but they are releasing them next week, the RFI on these $200 million. And DOE has noted that they will be having additional roundtables with stakeholders and updates. So that included a webinar that they had today where they talked about the programs, including announcing the RFI coming out. So what specifically is in the section is to provide training for education to contractors involved in the installation of home energy efficiency and electrification improvements, including improvements eligible for rebates under a homes rebate program or a high efficiency electric home rebate program, which is also referred to as HERA by many. So that is, again, many of the states will be putting in place homes and HERA programs. That is $8.8 billion of rebates. And those, and so as a result, this would be to ensure that there's training to support that. The states can use up to 10% for administrative expenses. Again, under homes and HERA, it's 20% for administrative expenses, and this is 10% to help with the development and implementation. So the eligible use of the funding is to reduce the cost of training to contractor employees, to provide testing and certification of contractors, and to partner with nonprofit organizations to develop and implement the grants. So how did these come about? This was a lot during the discussions related to the Homes Act, and as well as HERA. There was a talk about how we really need to have more trained contractors to be able to do this work. Under the Homes Act, it's performance-based. There's a lot of understanding of the whole house as a system and making sure the contractors are working together. So insulation contractors and HVAC contractors potentially working together to understand how these work. And there's lots of different training, BPI training, resident training, other training that's out there. This came out of the HOPE program, which it was in a previous legislation. So I just want to be very clear, everything on the screen right now is not what's in the law. What's in the screen is what the law was in the legislation that was in the underlying bill that the law came out of. So there was the Hope for Homes Act, which was HR 3456 and S 1768. And sometimes it's just important to understand, because as I've been talking to folks, sometimes, oh, I heard there's a requirement of this, a requirement of that, and they're remembering the HOPE program because it's so connected to homes for so long, because that legislation was called Hope for Homes. HOPE stood for Home Online Performance-Based Energy Efficiency. It was established in 2020 as part of Connected to Homes. Homes has been around for a decade, but HOPE came into play in 2020 because it was let's train contractors while they're stuck at home and not allowed in people's homes during the pandemic. That changed to just contractor training grants, as online was no longer a requirement. However, online, it was certainly still seen as a great option, given that there's so much investment in online resources that has happened over the last 2 years. And it is seen as one effort to address equity in training, being able to people who can take it after hours, not have to get childcare or transportation, which is often an issue with equity. So the things I just want to note here is these are just the pieces that are the HOPE has a big section of that bill, but these pieces are no longer in here. But things like IREC accredited programs, NREL job task analysis, these are lists of opportunities and things that the state might want to look at if they're looking at how to craft program or programs that they want to work with. So lots of different kinds of courses that might want to be considered, including home energy systems and insulation and health and safety. So again, not in the final law. The law is much more condensed because it went through budget reconciliation, but these are just some things that might be of interest to you. So another piece which is in the legislation, and Maddie asked me to talk about today, is the rebate certification requirement, because this is something that a certificate will need to be done to assess the value that's been provided once the rebate is done, and somebody needs to be trained for it. So it goes well with contractor training. But the IRA requires that state homes programs that are implemented plan for a certification of all residential energy efficiency retrofits. So a certification needs to be left at that time. And there's two things that the certificate needs to be. It needs to be provided by the contractor and certified by a third party to the homeowner, and detail the work performed, the equipment and materials installed, and the projected energy savings or energy generation to support accurate valuation of the retrofit. Now, right now, Home Energy Score does not exactly meet that. So that, and I know some have been looking at Home Energy Score for the modeling portion of the rebate program, but there's lots of opportunities. There's lots of things in the marketplace. And, and this is but there will need to be guidance specifically surrounding the certificate. So one thing to ask all of you state energy offices is, as you are thinking about how you would do the certification piece, if you have best practices, if there's things that are useful or not useful, concerns you have, please share them with Maddie. Please share them with me. We'd love to make sure that that is included in any comments that are made.
Tara, can I jump in for 1 second? If you can go back a slide, something in particular I want to draw folks to is that the certificate, it's provided by the contractor, but it's certified by the third party. So that is something in particular I'd be curious to get state feedback on. Would you guys be interested in being that third party? Do you want somebody else to play that role of the third party? That's one detail in particular that I'm curious about, but sorry, please continue.
No, really good point. Yes. And all of those pieces, including actually, and in that second piece related to the work performed and the projected energy savings and, accurately valuing retrofit, how you see that would be. So thank you. And so there's also a contractor incentive. This is something that the history behind this was because during the development of the programs, the rebate programs, there was concern from the DEI community in the discussion of the legislation that a lot of efficiency programs don't get marketed to disadvantaged communities, and how can that be addressed? This was one of the pieces that, there was certainly a focus on addressing income levels in both programs, as you are all aware. But that is what came to how do we get the contractors to really be incentivized to do this? And so there was in the Homes Act, that's when this piece was put in, to provide a contractor performing a home energy efficiency retrofit or an aggregator who has the right to claim the rebate, $200 for each home located in a disadvantaged community that receives a home rebate program, a rebate from the program. This was in the initial Homes Act. And the term disadvantaged community is a community that the secretary determines based on appropriate criteria. And there are already, the secretary has different, has shared disadvantaged community criteria. So I think that what the key thing here is that how would you put this together and how would you ensure, and is there a cap? These are a lot of the questions that have come as a result of it, because it's really just this one small piece, but it has to be in your plan for homes. This is in your plan for homes. And for the electrification program, this is also required in there that a state energy office or Indian tribe shall provide an eligible entity in addition to the rebate, an amount that does not exceed $500 and is commensurate with the scale of the upgrades installed. So that means anyone who's installing these. So this is not necessarily a DIY project, but it is related to, it does say commercial entity, government entity, anyone who's receiving the rebate is an eligible entity to receive the rebate, could potentially get this addition, a rebate that does not exceed $500. Again, doesn't mean it's 500, but it can exceed 500. Now, I bring this up because I want to make sure that state energy offices are aware of both of these, because you're probably going to, want to create, not have to recreate the wheel between the two, but create one essential system, or at least so that they're connected together. Now, one of the things that we did when the contractors is we have released a contractor survey on Homes Here and the training grants. This is targeted directly at contractors. We sent it out a few weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving. It's going through December 16th right now, though it could be extended. And that is to just try and get feedback from the contractors who are working on site to see what they think about it. Has no force of anything except information to the state energy offices. The survey has been distributed by the Building Performance Association, E for the Future, Pearl Certification, the Home Depot, NAMA, some state energy offices. I know you have sent the survey out to some of your states, and this is just kind of a few questions to show you sort of what we're hearing but this will be disaggregated further. And we'll put it all together for DOE and NASEO and to in a webinar for you all. But we haven't actually disaggregated to see where most of the states are coming from. We did ask every contractor participant to say what state they're from, so we'll be able to disaggregate that as well. So question 24 on it, it's on both programs. It's on all three programs, like including contractor training. Would receiving a $200 to $500 per home benefit, for low and moderate income households qualify for homes or electrification rebates? Would it make you more likely to work in disadvantaged communities? And it was kind of because that was one of the things we were hearing. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. Well, it sounds like a little over half. We're still not sure. It would depend on if there's a cap on how much they were going to get. That's generally the comment we were getting. 25% said no, and 20% said yes. So I think that the jury is a little bit out on this, but just a little teaser information for you. Question 25 is, if your business receiving training subsidies, what would be your preference for training? And this was ranked choice. And without a doubt, it was on-the-job training was where they would want to do that. Based on conversations I've had with some apprenticeship programs and with other contractors in the field, that I'm not surprised by this. They really need people on the job, but bringing somebody on the job and teaching them is also it takes longer. So having some subsidy for that was really important. Online and outside certification course testing, and then in person outside certification course testing. There was clearly some breakup there, but I know that there's a lot of I know some apprenticeship programs who've gone almost entirely online. So there are with the testing in person, of course. And then for question 27, how many days would you be willing to allow employees to take or pursue outside certification? This was, up to 1 week. Well, I was a little bit surprised by this one. 39% felt that up to 1 week was okay. Up to 2 weeks was 8%. That was still 1 day was 26%, half a day 5%, and of course there's 23% were not sure or what they didn't feel was applicable to their situation. So this is just that was just a quick overview that we're going to hopefully get a lot more from this. We're going to boost it again next week and hope to get a little bit more from contractors. So hopefully that will give you something to think about as you're trying to put together your programs. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Maddie. Thank you. This is my information. And thank you so much, Maddie.
Yes, thank you for sharing. We had a lot less to cover than we did on Tuesday, just because there's so much less text in these portions of the legislation. But I hope that everybody on the line feels like they know enough, or feel free to ask clarifying questions to have a bit of a discussion here. So we'll start with this discussion open to everybody, like I mentioned before. And then we will transition to a states only discussion. So let me dive into some of the questions that came for you in the chat. So the first one that we got is wondering how the certification compares to the certification requirements in the 25C tax credits.
So certification, so two things. There aren't certification requirements in the legislation. I think that still needs to be determined by the states. And the 25C tax credits don't have the same certification requirements as say 179D or 45L. So existing home requirements are in law are relatively minimal, but the certification requirements, we would anticipate that there would be certification requirements for homes, and that they might be there for electrification. That's again, hopefully up to the states to make some determinations, whether or not DOE sets any minimums or whether or not it's entirely up to the states is still jury is out. But if you have thoughts, please let us know.
The question of if states would like to set certification requirements, if you would like DOE to set minimums, is something that we're happy to hear, either now or at some point in the future. The next question that we have is, does the $200 per home for the contractor incentive apply to both single family and multifamily units?
Yes, we think. So I would, yes, we think. So I would leave that, that would be something that if you have a particular position on that, particularly as we're hearing from contractors, is there going to be a maximum? Let's say it's 100 unit, a multifamily building. It would be really interesting to hear from states specifically on that question. It's a very good one.
The next question that we have, and I should have said earlier, apologies, that you can enter your questions in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourselves or turn your video on to indicate that you want to ask a question. Feel free to do that as well. But going back to the chat, the next question that we have is, will the contractor have the ability to have the rebate and or any available tax credits paid directly to them and not the homeowner?
Okay, so on existing homes in the 25C tax credit, which is the one that's most relevant, unless we talk about 45L and new homes in electrification. But let's just focus on existing homes. If we're focusing on existing homes, 25C tax credit has to go to the homeowner. That can't be reassigned. There's no reassignment in the legislation. But the rebate is also to the homeowner. However, how it works out there's somewhat different between the modeled pathway and the measured pathway, because it could go to an aggregator. So how the aggregator therefore works with the contractor, that is where it might be somewhat different. So there is some flexibility there, and I'm talking about the overall rebate. The $200 rebate, that is supposed to go to the contractor, because it's an incentive to the contractor to work in disadvantaged communities, and the hope is that they'll expand their portfolio of effort in those in communities that don't usually get their flyers and their engagement, and they're knocking on the door saying, hey, can I do an energy audit? That type of thing. Hope I answered that.
Robert, I see you've got your hand raised, so let's go to you next.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Kara, good to see you again. Just a quick note, at Lowe's, an important part of our business is our relationship with pro customers, who are the contractors that serve customers and do these home improvement projects for them. We believe that we could be an effective partner in both the Department of Energy's and state energy offices' efforts to engage with those customers and be a part of the education process and awareness campaigns that'll be necessary for them to take up these opportunities. Just curious if you or any of the other state energy offices have given any thoughts into what role retailers like us could play in this program, and just open up any opportunities for collaboration there. Well,
love to work with you on getting a survey out to your pro customers. Happy to do that. And I'm making a little note about that. So let's touch base. But also, I think that where the retailers stand is going to be really important, and where those, because the average homeowner often goes to Lowe's or Home Depot or, to look into these systems and understand them. So the contractor is really the main educator of a lot of homeowners, because they don't think about their energy systems until they're broken. And the contractor shows up, and then the contractor says, well, the reason why your son's room upstairs is really cold is because there's no insulation in your attic, that type of thing. So we really need to make sure that those contractors understand it all. So I think you're just going to we would love to talk with you as to how you think we could best fit in the program too. So
that'd be great.
Let's just follow up.
Yeah, and I've got your information, so we can connect offline, but thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
And if any state on the line wants to follow up with that comment, I'm happy to facilitate as well. But for now, let's go back to the chat. We have a question. Are the certification requirements set by the state, or is that yet to be determined? So I'll just clarify that we don't know yet. It's still TBD. I think if DOE will set any kind of training and workforce development requirements, or if it will be left totally up to the states. The next question we have is, this is more for the group, but Kara, feel free to weigh in. Are states planning on partnering with local agencies to implement contractor training funds? How many are looking to partner with local agencies or nonprofits with pre-existing programs versus standing up brand new contractor training programs? I'm not sure if that's something Kara or I could answer right now, but if anyone wants to answer, feel free to do so in the chat or to raise your hand and chime in. That is fine as well.
Yeah, I would say that the money is going through SEP, but I mean, that question is, I think it would be really great to hear from the states as to whether or not they want to stand up a new contractor training for, they've been itching to do it, or whether or not this is something they'd like to join with a neighboring state. I know right now, excuse me, that happens a lot, that the training center might be in a neighboring state, and how would you want to work that? I mean, I would love to hear what kind of opportunities states are considering, whether they want to stand it up, whether they like to be able to use their resources in a neighboring state, or whether there's something, you know, different or regionally, nationally that they would rather see.
Yeah. The next question we have is, do the incentive payments, the incentive for working in disadvantaged communities, count as income for contractors? Do you know, Kara?
You know, it is not noted in the law. So that is a question that is not clear in the law. So I think we'll need to ask DOE and potentially the IRS on that one.
Yeah. We got another question in the chat. I'm going to do the question in the chat and then turn to you, Rupa. The question in the chat is for Kara. Why was there no consideration for consumer education in the legislation? Where a contractor training is needed, we also need to make sure there is demand and that low-income folks in particular are educated on heat pumps, heat pump hot water heaters, and induction cooktops.
Well, that's actually part of the expectation was that it would be part of the administration of the program. There's 3% that DOE took off the top of the program, and then 20% that the state energy offices have. It wasn't dictated that they would use it for promotion of you know, to consumers, but I think that is part of the expectation, is that once the state energy office decides how they're going to do it and what they want to do, that they would use some of their resources to share that. It wasn't dictated here. It was in the underlying legislation.
And then there was a question for me if I think it would be a good idea for NASEO to propose to DOE that consumer education is an acceptable part of these training grants. I will look back at the text of the legislation and see if there's wiggle room for us to do that or not, and I can follow up. Rupa, let's go to you. Did you have a question?
Yeah.
I thought I saw a hand up.
No, sorry, I was just trying
to
unmute myself. But thank you, Kara, for the presentation. Thank you, Maddie, for coordinating this. I had a question on whether is partnering with a nonprofit like an absolute criteria, because right now in New Jersey, like we do some training programs through a state university. And other, a state organization. So does that, do we have to go through a nonprofit?
Well, it's to partner with nonprofit organizations to develop and implement. And the nonprofit is noted, but most universities are nonprofits. So, so hopefully a lot of junior colleges I know are thinking about this program, who work in this. Whether or not it's I think, and there are also nonprofits that support apprenticeship programs. So does that answer your question? And I guess you're right. I guess maybe this, state universities, public universities are nonprofits do come into that category. I haven't thought about that, but I'll verify. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Maybe I can jump in with a clarifying question for me. Partnering with a nonprofit is allowable, but is it the only option for the use of these funds?
Well, the third use of the fund is to partner with nonprofit
Yeah.
organizations to develop and implement a state program pursuant to subsection A. So it was 15 pages reduced down to a page and a half. So but the expectation was that it would be nonprofits and I think it was universities and nonprofits, that a lot of nonprofit training centers. That was essentially the expectation. But I think if states have a feeling that this isn't going to work for them, please clarify with us why, and if there's so that we can understand it. It is a page and a half of legislation. It is not specifically defined. So it would be really great to, I'm sure the Department of Energy would like to understand why certain things work better than others. And if there's for-profit institutions that are really needed, how to include them.
Yeah. The next question that we have is, where can we find further specification on what the Secretary defines as disadvantaged communities?
So they haven't defined it for this legislation. I probably wasn't super clear. There have been other places where disadvantaged communities have been specified at EPA and at DOE. So I think we'll wait for the Secretary to make that final definition, but I know that what they're going to be highlighting as a definition. So, but we can, I can work with Maddie on looking at different definitions if that's something that the states would like to look at.
Or if you have one that you prefer and would like to use, feel free to send it my way as well.
Exactly.
The next question that we have is, I think we see a lot of need for recruitment, not just training for installers and contractors, but also for program teams to drum up community interest, help homeowners understand and participate in these programs. Can these funds be used to support recruiter development as well, or just contractors?
So that's an excellent point. And I think it goes to the education piece, but to the, too, as well, right? Because we need to educate homeowners. We have to educate just everyone out there that might be looking for a job, that these are real jobs that pay livable wages and and are growing. So it says to reduce the cost of contractor training of training contractor employees. It doesn't, so recruitment is a cost. So I would argue recruitment's a huge cost to contractors in trying to bring people in. So I would argue that cost of recruitment is in there, but please do share that. It's a great point, and we should definitely consider that as a response in an RFI. So thank you for bringing that up.
And then a follow-up comment is, I'm not sure that many on-the-ground contractors, especially from smaller businesses, are prepared to be recruiters too.
Wait, that many aren't prepared to be recruiters too. Yeah. Well, we need to, so maybe they need to be maybe there's some recruiting opportunities that need to be hired to support them. And that could be done under this, super great points that need to be covered.
Akara, note for you, just want to make sure that you saw, Elevate says we can share the survey to contractors that Elevate works with.
Oh, well, that'd be great. I'll send it to you, and I'll send it to everyone. Robert, Elena, everybody gets it. And we can extend it. I mean, I think the key, we didn't know when the RFIs were going to come out when we first set it out. And contractors were, one of the reasons we did the survey is because contractors were reaching out because they were involved in the lobby days related to this legislation. And they said, are we going to have a voice in this implementation? And so we wanted to at least give them an opportunity that we could share with all of you what they're thinking. So happy to send it out, happy to share it with you. So thank you.
And I'm gonna share a comment or two that we got from states about how they're looking at the contractor training, just in case folks don't have their eyes on the chat. So this is from Virginia, the state of Virginia. they say we're going to commission an energy efficiency workforce needs assessment to understand what our needs are going to be and what the existing landscape of training programs looks like. That way we could start to see what existing infrastructure we can use and what new things we might need to set up. And
Great
then
idea.
we had another response from Georgia, again, a state, not a person. We are interested in partnering with our technical colleges in Georgia on workforce development in general. This could potentially include a needs assessment, finding related programs that could be modified, and seeing how this might also benefit a weatherization program, which has specific training needs.
Another great thing. And, you know, as these needs assessments come out, you know, I think a lot of states can learn from each other on these because, you know, I know everybody's different and we've got different workforces, but it's been remarkable in our survey that has hit different parts of the country, how a lot of the, you know, responses are coming back somewhat similar too. So.
That is all of the commentary that we have in the chat. Let me just scroll, make sure no one's got any hands raised. Please continue to add your questions and comments as you'd like to.
And again, the RFI is going to be coming out next week. I'm sure Maddie will be circulating it once it does. And we'd love to get your thoughts and feedback on that. As you know, everyone, I know there's going to be lots of different responses to the RFI coming out, but if there's a consensus, one thing which is really great is if there's something that you think is really, really vitally important, let us know. Let's make sure that everybody can who agrees with you and includes it in their comments.
Yep.
So do we get
NASEO got the question the other week if we had specifically timed this meeting to be in line with that RFI, and the answer is that we just got lucky, but that we will use, you know, what we've heard here in other discussions to help inform our response to that as well.
I will say that the survey was a little bit planned and we want to get that out there just in case, you know, but I had no idea exactly when.
Yeah.
They just said sometime in December. So we're like, oh, better get this out.
There's more interest in the chat in your survey, Kara, if you can share the results by state, and some comments from Elevate about their programs that they can reach with the survey. Awesome.
Wonderful. Super great. I really appreciate it. We'll add your name to a list and people can check. And anybody who sends it out will definitely roll up there. You get your own rolled up response just for you. That's our gift to you. And then we'll aggregate it and separate it by states for NASEO and DOE. And then we'll do a webinar. You know, we just want to be, this was really an effort to be responsive to all those contractors who supported trying to get the legislation through in the first place. And now they're like, now you're gonna ask us how we want that implemented. So.
And yeah, we'll get that on the books just as soon as Kara's ready. She's got all the results.
Yeah. So, and we might be extending it a bit. So.
Yes. Yeah. Unless there's anyone on the line who's got additional thoughts or questions, I'm going to do some brief wrap up on next steps, and then we'll transition to the states only discussion part of the meeting. So pretty simple next steps is that we are planning sort of like sub working groups on all of these larger buckets, I guess we'll call them, of parts of the legislation, different provisions. So stay tuned. For now, we've got on the books, I'll be sending out invites. We're going to be starting up a recurring series where states that have done residential programs either currently or in the past come and present to their peers. Just to share some lessons learned, best practices, and like share ideas for setting up programs, hopefully especially valuable for states that might be looking at doing this for the first time. So thank you in advance to the, I think, 7 states that volunteered to present. And so those will be going out. We'll also have a dedicated meeting series specific to measured, the ins and outs of what it takes to make that work. And then we will have meetings on contractor training. We'll obviously want to get feedback on the RFI responses. And then we will also, use the opportunity to parse any things specific that we want to relay to DOE. So you've got questions or concerns, something that we need to finesse in order to make some recommendations to DOE, this will be the space to do it. Does anyone have any questions or comments about that outlined? Certainly open to change if anyone has strong feelings about it. And you can always email me too. You don't have to announce it right now. Okay, everybody seems quiet for now. So thank you, Kara. We'll transition now to our states only portion of the meeting to have some discussion. Thanks to everybody who is tuned in. I will post a recording of the public part of the meeting on the NASEO website and send it around to everybody. And hopefully we'll see you on Tuesday for the last ever 101 series. We'll be talking about the point of sale and income verification required as part of the electrification rebates. All right, thanks, Kara.
Thank you. And thanks, everyone.